to wear it a lot, but they're not wearing that. And like in the winter, I'll wear it a lot. And they'll be like, oh, you're just right. Yeah, rock it. And I'm like, hey, it's my color. I like that.
Good morning.
How are you?
How are you doing?
How about yourself?
Good, doing well. Oh, yeah. We thought about it. I'm just trying to take weekends a little quieter and stuff out. Yeah, oh, the ones in my house? Yeah, I know. That was
Yes,
we displayed outside there. All right.
Thank you for the invitation.
Hanging in there. You keep my college, my law school roommates in line. Wait, oh, okay, got it. Oh, there you go. Yes, exactly. But I was college law school roommates with the Mertzes and McInerney.
And you survived.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I hope yours is that. Well, I left. They stayed together. So please keep them in line.
The Mertzes?
Yeah, a Branham and a Bellarmine boy.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
All right. Hey guys, we've got a large lineup today. Is everybody feeling ready? You guys know the order. We're just not each person introduce the next person. That works. Oh yeah. I'm going to show take it up there. So here it is, and we'll have each person introduce the next. Just in the interest of time. Everybody saw this. Okay. All right. Well, Congressman, thanks for your leadership and for being here. We're ready to go. Hey.
I told that to Brooke.
No,
All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. How's the sound? Is it all right? We ready to go? Our friends in the media, everybody's good? I'm seeing thumbs up. Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. I want to thank our Congressman Representative Panetta for his leadership in bringing us together. Elected officials, law enforcement, and community advocates in support of the Immigrant Witness and Victim Protection Act, a proposal that addresses a fundamental gap in our public safety system. The actions and rhetoric coming from the federal government have had an unacceptable chilling effect here in San Jose. I've heard firsthand from residents who are now too afraid to leave their homes, too afraid to go to work, and as you'll hear more from Chief Joseph and Under Sheriff Rodriguez, too afraid to engage with law enforcement even when they are victims of serious crimes. That fear impacts all of us. In San Jose, over 40% of our residents are immigrants. When any of our neighbors live in fear that reporting a crime might put their life in this country at risk, it makes everyone less safe. Our police officers lose the ability to build cases, our prosecutors lose key witnesses, and our communities are left all the more vulnerable to violent crime. That's why you and T visas and the work of our congressmen are a critical component of keeping people safe, and why we need to ensure that everyone who needs one gets one. These visas allow undocumented victims of serious crimes to come forward, share what they've experienced, and cooperate with law enforcement, all without the looming fear of deportation. And I want to be clear, our police officers do not and will not ask about immigration status. They are here to protect everyone in our community and enforce our local laws. And it's just common sense that we are all safer when everyone feels comfortable reporting crimes and being a witness and adding to the evidence needed to prosecute those victimizing our community. We need every resident to feel safe calling 911 or speaking with our first responders. Public safety depends on trust, and trust starts with the ability to ask for help without fear. But even with that local commitment, our efforts fall short if victims are still at risk of detention or deportation elsewhere in the justice system. If someone is deported while their case is pending, it sends a message to others who might otherwise come forward. That's why federal protections, like the ones in this bill, like the ones Congressman Panetta are fighting to expand, are absolutely essential to protecting our public safety. Ensuring more people have access to these visas does not weaken our laws, it strengthens our ability to enforce them. When we empower victims of crime to speak up, we bring criminals to justice. When we protect immigrants, we protect our entire community. Before I hand things over to Congressman Panetta, who's leading this charge in Washington, I want to say just a few words in Spanish. Muchos inmigrantes en nuestra comunidad tienen miedo de denunciar delitos o incluso servir como testigos. La nueva ley del congresista Panetta ayudará a proteger a las víctimas y hará que nuestra ciudad sea más segura. Todos debieran sentirse seguros al llamar a la policía sin importar su estatus migratorio. Gracias otra vez al congresista Panetta for su leadership. And with that, I would like to hand things over to Congressman Panetta and thank him once again for his bold leadership and working to keep our entire community safe. Congressman, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, as always, for your stepped-up leadership, no matter what the issue when it affects San Jose and the greater Santa Clara County, and I can tell you the 19th Congressional District. Your issues are our issues, so appreciate partnering with you and appreciate you being here. Appreciate you facilitating this. Let me also thank the electeds, the law enforcement, the prosecutors, the advocates that stand behind me, because we stand here for justice, but also what it takes for justice. We stand here today because we stand against this administration's deportation policy, which is making it very difficult to accomplish that goal of justice. In fact, I believe it's making it worse. At first, when it came to the administration's deportation policy that was targeted to felons, I think it was understandable why you had bipartisan support for that, Democrats and Republicans. However, what we're seeing is that this administration, with the leadership, unfortunately, of Stephen Miller, have cast a wide net, basically a shotgun approach to rounding up anybody and everybody who is undocumented or even documented and has a misdemeanor or an arrest or has no record at all. Even TPS recipients are being deported at this point. That includes workers on the farm, in construction, in our hospitals, in our health care, and many other places where you will find few Americans doing that type of work, no matter how much you pay them. And many immigrants who fall into those categories not only fall into the web of the administration's deportation policies, they at times can fall prey to criminals and become witnesses and victims. Now look, as a former prosecutor, I learned many lessons early on in my career that I admit I wish some of my colleagues in Congress actually learned as well. One of the most important ones is that it's not about what we say that proves a case, it's about what the witnesses say. That is why cases in courts of law in California and throughout this country are still proven based on what people say, based on their word. Now, I think as you're going to hear today, and as many of you know, being a witness is not easy. It's tough. It's not easy for people to talk about a crime, let alone do it in front of strangers or the defendant who committed that crime. Many of us can't imagine being put in that situation. Well, try thinking what it would be like if you're not only a witness, but you're in a different land, a different language, a different government, a different justice system, and you're in an undocumented status. Now, in the 19th Congressional District, there are many undocumented immigrants that basically play a very important role, an invaluable role in our economies, in our community, and yes, in our courtrooms. And oftentimes, undocumented immigrants live in the shadows. And we know that oftentimes it's in these shadows where crimes occur. But oftentimes, by witnesses and victims, no matter their documentation, they come out of the shadows, they come into court, and they help our community obtain justice. But by being in that situation, they're now put in a position that most try to avoid. It's not just the difficulties of testifying, not just in dealing with law enforcement and the criminal justice system. They are now exposing themselves to deportation. One of the crucial ways that we make it easier on those victims and witnesses is with U&T visas. These visas are granted to victims of crimes and human trafficking if they cooperate with law enforcement. Then they're allowed to stay in the United States of America. As a former gang prosecutor, I can tell you that is the least that we can do in order to have these victims and witnesses come forward. But there's a couple of problems with these visas right now. One, they cap them at $10,000 a year. And that creates a severe backlog as to who's receiving these U&T visas. Two, witnesses and victims, while they're waiting for the processing, can still be deported. And three, this Trump administration, it knows and is targeting those applicants through their deportation policies. And what's worse, they're targeting them in our courts. Now, the bill that I've put together, the Immigrant Witness and Victim Protection Act, would protect cooperating victims and witnesses by preventing them from being deported while they await processing their U&T visas. It would eliminate that arbitrary cap of $10,000, and it would allow applicants to have work permits while awaiting processing of their U&T visas. It's a very straightforward, simple, commonsensical fix that's needed now more than ever. At a time when there is great distrust in government, the Immigrant Witness and Victim Protection Act allows witnesses and victims to trust our criminal justice system, to come out of the shadows and to come forward. This bill would not only allow us to secure justice in courtrooms, it would provide safety and security to our communities, and it would strengthen that trust in our democracy that's needed now more than ever. So I appreciate everybody being here, standing together, not just for this bill, but for immigrants, for our communities, and for our country. The next speaker I can give you is someone who you can tell is in the U.S. Navy, has served in the U.S. Navy because he has a tie on like myself, who also served in the U.S. Navy, but also a champion here for the people of Santa Clara County, and that's Supervisor Otto Lee.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Congressman, for convening this very important presser to talk about this important bill. So first of all, I have known Jimmy for quite a few years. Both of us are what we call sand sailors, right? Having gone through Fort Jackson and served our time respectively in the Middle East. And he and I actually are both distinguished veterans that have both earned a Bronze Star. So thank you, Congressman Panetta, for your service as well. That being said, good morning, everybody. My name is Otto Lee. I'm currently serving as the board president at the board of supervisor of Santa Clara County, representing 2 million residents right here, 15 cities, and we are the largest county in Northern California. Without the contributions of our county's immigrants, I wouldn't be here today. I have the honor of also serving as the county's first, but certainly not going to be the last, immigrant as a supervisor. Our county is not only because of the fact that we're as large as Northern California, but also really the most diverse. Over 40% of our residents in our county are immigrants. And on the streets, you'll hear almost 100 different languages from all over the world being spoken. Additionally, our immigrant population provides our county with over 50% of our locally owned businesses as entrepreneurs. Immigrants make our country tick, immigrants make our country and our county complete. And that's why it's so important that we ensure our immigrant communities have the full protection of the law, federal, state, and local laws, especially those who are victims of domestic violence and of crime that needs the assistance of law enforcement to help solve these crimes. We have critical resources available to immigrants right here in our county, such as the UNT visas that's already existing, which help support undocumented immigrants who have been victimized by crime or domestic violence. Unfortunately, as said earlier by Congressman Panetta, these caps and backlogs in processing these visas leave many immigrants vulnerable to the risk of detainment and worse, deportation, and oftentimes when they most need the support and the protection. And we also face threats from many policy from the changes in the ICE and the new proposals coming from the federal government that threaten the safety and dignity of our immigrant communities. Many times we see ICE agents and even imposters of ICE agents masked up with no ID, running around, arresting, conducting violent arrests, scaring a lot of people in our community. And that's absolutely not acceptable. And that's why it is so vital for us as elected officials to stand up and protect our fellow community members as much as we can. Just like what the mayor has said, our county staff, including our county sheriff deputies, will not care about whether somebody has documents or not being here. Our main goal is to make sure everybody, every resident in this county will be protected so that they know that when they have an issue, when they need help, from law enforcement, from crime, or whatever it might be, they can come to our police officer, our county sheriff deputy to get the help they need and deserve. And I also want to specifically commend Representative Jimmy Panetta for authoring and reintroducing this important legislation, which will make a real difference as we strive to protect our most vulnerable residents from abuse, from domestic violence, and from trafficking. So thank you, Congressman Panetta, for helping to bring our undocumented communities out of the shadows and under the protection of the law, protected by our Constitution of federal law, which applies to all Americans, regardless of their immigration status. And I'm proud to stand here along with these leaders behind me to say that with one voice, that we will stand up for every member of our community. And up next, I would like to welcome to the stage my colleague at the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor for District 4, Supervisor Susan Ellenberg.
Good morning, and thank you all for being with us on this very important day. As my colleague noted, I am Susan Ellenberg. I represent District 4 on the County Board of Supervisors, which includes the cities of Campbell and Santa Clara, the Burbank unincorporated pocket, and much of West San Jose. And I am here today to stand with my community. At its core, Congressmember Panetta's bill is about ensuring that no one is forced to choose between safety and silence. We know that domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking fester and grow when victims fear that reporting a crime could lead to their own deportation. This fear silences victims, empowers abusers, and leaves our community vulnerable. This bill would eliminate the arbitrary cap on UNT visas, removing a major barrier to justice for undocumented victims of harm. With wait times now exceeding 5 years, the backlog puts survivors at risk and undermines all of our public safety. In Santa Clara County, we will not tolerate residents living in fear. We also know that trust is the foundation of effective law enforcement. Our county has worked very hard to build that trust, and it's working. Our sheriff's office has listened to the community invested in transparency, and demonstrates accountability. Lifting the cap on UNT visas sends a clear message. We believe survivors. We protect our neighbors. And we are committed to a system that serves everyone, not just the few. Thank you again, Congressmember Panetta, for your leadership. It is an honor to stand in front of all of these respected colleagues who are working on behalf of our shared community. We are one county with one future. It is now my privilege to introduce Assistant District Attorney Terry Harmon.
Good morning. If only it were possible to put a cap on crime. If only it were possible to put a cap on the number of harms, to limit the number of harms humans inflict on each other. But unfortunately, that cannot be the case. And since there is no cap on crime, Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeff Rosen joins everybody here to get rid of caps that support and benefit victims of crime. The Santa Clara County DA's office is in support of Congressman Jimmy Panetta's introduction of a bill that will eliminate the arbitrary U visa cap of $10,000 per year. The main purpose of the U visa is to encourage undocumented crime victims to help law enforcement investigate and prosecute crimes without fear of being deported. Every year, the DA's office prosecutes thousands of cases involving domestic violence, sexual assault, robberies, homicides, DUIs, assault, and white-collar crime. Our position in all of these cases has always been we are concerned about the details of the crime, not the details of your immigration status, because political rhetoric does not change what we care about, which is justice. Nearly half of all of our U visa applicants are women, victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. We have seen a 50% increase in applications over the last 5 years. The District Attorney's Office encourages undocumented immigrants who are victims of crime to report the incident to law enforcement. We do not want anyone who has been harmed or who has witnessed someone else being harmed to remain silent because of fear of being deported. We care about people being held accountable for committing crimes against others. We care about making sure that dangerous people don't hurt anyone else. The fact that victims are undocumented does not decriminalize the rape, the murder, the robbery, or the scam. Threat of deportation is a common and manipulative ploy among child abusers, child molesters, and domestic violence abusers. Failing to address the U visa backlog keeps victims trapped in abusive relationships and prevents abusers from being held accountable. This bill will make our communities safe. Please help us support this common sense public safety bill. And I'm proud to introduce our Undersheriff Dalia Rodriguez.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dalia Rodriguez. I'm the Undersheriff for the County of Santa Clara Office of the Sheriff. On behalf of Sheriff Johnson, I'm very happy to be here in support of this very important legislation. Thank you, Congressman Panetta, for allowing us to voice our concern regarding what is happening with our immigration community as of today and the last couple of months. Obviously, there's a lot of concern with our immigration community. They are in fear of reporting certain crimes to law enforcement agencies, and that is because they fear deportation. Having access to U visas and T visas is extremely important for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, as well as human trafficking. It helps them stay safe. It helps them know that when they report crime, they will not be deported. this is something that is critical for our office because we want to continue to maintain that relationship with our community is extremely important. Having that rapport, having the ability to reach out to these communities, having them be witnesses and reporting crime is essential to maintain the safety of our entire community. Now, that is the reason why we support this bill, and we applaud him for bringing this forward. Now, I will say that in Spanish. Is everybody okay with that? ¿Sí? Ok. Buenos días, mi nombre es Dalia Rodríguez, soy el subalguacil del Condado de Santa Clara. Estoy aquí representando a nuestro sheriff, a nuestro alguacil, Robert Johnson, y estamos aquí para apoyar esta legislación que es súper importante para el apoyo de los inmigrantes que son muy parte grande de nuestra comunidad. Este bill da permiso para que las personas puedan estar aquí con una visa U o una visa T. Muchas de nuestras personas que son víctimas y son testigos de crimen necesitan estas visas para quedarse en este país, para representar lo que les ha pasado, para que sepan que son víctimas de crimen. Estas visas son muy importantes para nuestra comunidad y estamos aquí para apoyar y estamos dando muchas gracias a nuestro congresista Panetta por darnos la oportunidad para representar que nosotros estamos apoyando esta legislación. Muchas gracias. Of course, I would fail at this, right? And now it is my pleasure to introduce San Jose Chief Paul Joseph.
Public safety in action. Good morning. Public safety is not a privilege reserved for some and not others. It's a promise we owe to everyone who calls our community home, regardless of their immigration status. That is why I stand in strong support of the Immigrant Witness and Victim Protection Act. As law enforcement officers, we rely on trust. We need people to come forward, victims, witnesses, those brave enough to speak up after trauma. But too often, survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking stay silent, not because they don't believe in justice, but because they fear deportation. This bill changes that. By removing the arbitrary cap on U visas and T visas and guaranteeing timely work authorization, it gives victims a reason to speak and a path to healing. And it gives law enforcement a fighting chance to hold predators accountable. The U visa and T visa program has been a vital tool used by law enforcement for years to ensure the availability of victims and witnesses whose presence in court is necessary to ensure the successful prosecution of dangerous criminals. In other words, the U visa and T visa programs improve public safety for everyone in our community. Here in San Jose, where nearly 40% of our residents were born abroad and more than half speak a language other than English, we understand that diversity is our strength, but we also know that trust is our foundation. Fear of deportation erodes that trust and drives victims deeper into the shadows. This legislation helps break that cycle. It reinforces a simple truth: seeking safety should never be a risk. When survivors and witnesses can come forward without fear, justice has a chance to speak louder than threats. Let's not let bureaucracy stand in the way of public safety. Let's support this act and send a message that no one is above the law and no one is beneath its protection. With that, I'd like to introduce Jeremy Bruce from Amigos de Guadalupe.
Good afternoon, Jeremy Bruce, Director of Policy and Organizing with Amigos de Guadalupe, Center for Justice and Empowerment. Thank you to Congressman Panetta for inviting us to speak and for your leadership in reintroducing this important bill. At a time when immigrants have been under relentless attack, this legislation helps undocumented immigrants, especially those most vulnerable, feel seen and feel heard. Make no mistake about it, there is palpable fear in our immigrant community right now in San Jose and Santa Clara County. And as a place-based agency in East San Jose, we see it and live it every day. We have families who are afraid to leave their homes out of fear of being separated. And as a place-based agency, we receive dozens of requests for immigration legal services on a daily basis. It's the #1 requested service at our agency, and many of those requests are for individuals seeking some form of relief after falling victim to a crime. Unfortunately, for those who qualify, go into the backlog. Our undocumented community is already vulnerable enough, and victims of crimes are in even dire situations. For immigrants, this serves as a double punishment. One, you're undocumented, and on top of that, you're being exploited. With many times the case, the perpetrator is able to further the exploitation by leveraging the victim's immigration status against them. Fear of deportation or lack of legal status can be major barriers for immigrant victims, but UNT visas offer a pathway to legal status, strengthens public safety while providing relief for individuals at the same time. UNT visas provide a lifeline for individuals who have suffered significant physical or mental trauma due to criminal activity. It also gives them an opportunity to, at a work permit, to support their families, access social services, and rebuild their lives in a safe environment. Thank you, Congressmember Panetta, for your leadership. Amigos de Guadalupe stands with the leaders here today to call on Congress to put their differences aside and once and for all stand up and be a voice for our immigrant communities. Thank you.
Thank you for those powerful words, Jeremy. And so just as we wrap up, I want to express my gratitude on behalf of our entire community, my gratitude to Congressman Panetta for his leadership, for identifying this gap in our public safety system, this threat to justice, and for bringing forward a common sense solution that makes us all safer, protects our most vulnerable neighbors, but enhances public safety for the entire community. Congressman, I don't know if you want to take a few questions as we wrap up, but I just want to thank you once again for your leadership.
And can you announce who you're from?
Yeah, hi, I'm Len Ramirez from CBS.
Of course, yeah. Hey, Len.
What sort of bipartisan support do you think you would have for something like this?
Yeah.
And as a follow-up, do you think that ICE would respect these visas in today's climate where even U.S. citizens are being, taken?
Well, I think that's the problem. Right now, you're saying ICE not respect any sort of visas. Like I said, even TPS recipients are being asked to leave, and people who are here in a green card status in a couple of cases in the 19th Congressional District have been rounded up, stopped at the airports, detained, and then gone through the process of being either removed or actually being allowed to stay here. So what we're seeing now is that they don't respect the process. That's exactly why we want to have this type of legislation to becomes law of the land so that they do respect not just the visas, but they respect immigrants and they respect the law of the land. And so I do believe that there are members on both sides of the aisle that are willing to come together around such a commonsensical type of legislation. The problem that we have right now, and that I've seen in my limited time in Congress, is that immigration reform is one of the most politically complicated, policy complex issues around. However, I do believe that we may have a chance here coming up. You have numbers at the border dropping, therefore it shouldn't be the political issue that this president has used to get into office, and therefore it's an opportunity to actually focus on common sense immigration reform, not just with UNT visas, but also protecting our immigrants who have been here, who contribute here, who are working here, and deserve that right to stay here because of their lack of criminal record and the fact that they're a part of this community. So I'm part of a number of groups in Washington, D.C. that consist of Democrats and Republicans that are actually starting to talk about that, develop legislation that's in a bipartisan fashion that I just hope the president can accept. The problem is that the president has people around him like Stephen Miller who do not think like we think here. Even though he's from California, He's got something going on where he just wants to, I think it's clear based on the policy, his focus is on immigrants, no matter if they're here in a documented or undocumented fashion, and his focus is on removing them. That's where we have to stand up. That's why I'm so honored and humbled to have the support of these electeds, these law enforcement officers behind me who are willing to stand up, stand firm, and highlight these types of simple fixes. And so look forward to continuing to spread that word in Congress and get bipartisan support behind this bill.
I can't think of it exactly what you're describing, and that therein lies the problem. If someone didn't come forward because of a fear of deportation, maybe that's a witness we never even knew existed. Maybe that's a victim that we never even knew needed our help. And I think that's exactly the issue that the Congressman's bill is trying to address. I couldn't give you a specific instance of that. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
What are your officers seeing on the streets right now? Are they like seeing doors not opening when they're looking for witnesses to a crime in a neighborhood? Are they getting people who refuse to talk to them while they're investigating?
What I can tell you is we are seeing somewhat of a decline in reported incidents of domestic violence, sexual assault, and calls for service for disturbances. Those are all the types of things that happen, inside of a home for the most part, and the very kinds of crimes where the survivors are going to have a really have that wrestle with that thought of, if I ask for help, is this going to have an impact for me? So it's early, but we are seeing that for certain.
Just to answer your question, and this is not very recent, but I will say that in our immigrant community, that farm workers particularly, a lot of them are afraid to report crimes, and a lot of them become victims of crime because of the uncertainty of what's going to happen to them if they report it. And so we did have a case, I want to say a few years ago, probably in the first term, where there was immigrants that were being fraudulently taken advantage of. People were telling them that they were going to get papers and things like that. They were going to be able to get their green card, and they were taking their money, but they were afraid to report it because, again, they were undocumented. So in situations like that, we're seeing a lot of people that are not willing to come forward, that are victims of fraud, and they are being victimized every single day. And again, it's because they don't have access to the information. They don't have the education enough to understand that there is a process and that we're here to help. So that's why we want you, as our news people or social people, to relay the information that we are absolutely here to help. We're here to provide them with the safety that they need, and this bill is going to help us continue to provide that type of safety net for them.
Ready to wrap up? You want to take any more questions? Okay, we'll do, thank you all again for being here. We'll be happy to do some one-on-one interviews. Appreciate everybody being here today, and thank you again, Congressman.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
I'll tell them you say hello.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't think we met before. Sorry. Okay, very nice to meet you. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. Good. No, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the invitation.